It's no longer enough for a pastor to just simply be a shepherd anymore. They want to be entrepreneurs, influencers, motivational speakers, and cultural gurus. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if they used the highest levels of their integrity to leave ministry and chase their dreams of second-tier cultural popularity. However, many of them choose not to. In fact, they will tell you that they choose not to because they have a calling on their lives to lead you. But in all honesty, you are no longer their priority as their church members. Actually, you, their church members and their sheep, are their product. You're their platform and what we call their lead magnet. You are what they put in front of the watching eyes of the internet and the general public. You are how they get brand deals, book publishers, conference recruiters, and so on to target them. Their shout outs are no longer for the people that have labored beside them for years in ministry. They are for those that have helped them perfect their funnels now. Those that they have recently done the most numbers and content with. It's their business partners. People who are never taught to properly grow up in their faith will always look for and find someone to make them feel like they're closer to growth, that they're more inspired to grow, and that their breakthrough for Jesus is right around the corner. But in all honesty, these people who so-called lead you wouldn't know your name if it wasn't attached to your subscription or your conference lanyard. Today, in this session of Intention, we want to tackle one question. Are pastors selling themselves on the internet and using their churches as their primary advertisements? Or are they effectively and successfully communicating the gospel to all the nations after they have been an amazing shepherd in their own pastures? We are going to answer this question through the story of a man named Micah in Judges 17 and 18. I want you to grab your Bible, say a prayer, and make sure you are discerning properly through the Holy Spirit, because I believe we are about to experience a little tension. In Judges 17 and 18, we run into a man named Micah. The scriptures tell us that Micah is from the hill country of Ephraim. The introduction to Micah's story is scandalous. It places him in the middle of a conflict with his mother. 1,100 of her shekels have gone missing. They were stolen. And his mother cursed the thief, not knowing that her son not only matched the description, but was guilty of the crime. In between verses 2 and 3, Micah confesses and returns the silver to his mother. And this is where we start to get deep into how this story has to deal with our pastors. Micah's mother is elated. She's more elated. Micah's mother is elated. Is she more elated that her son has returned the silver in an act of penitence, or more happy about the silver itself is what we don't know. But what we do know is her excitement will lead her to dedicate 200 pieces of silver to the Lord that she gives to Micah to use to go make a graven image and a molten image. Yes, like many of the people sitting in the seats of our churches today, Micah's mother is a believer in multiple gods. She is giving thanks to Yahweh God, Jehovah, but at the same time trying to get him to build idols. But in this day, we seem to believe that pastors can have digital disciples, that they can authentically lead people not only into salvation, but in the life of Jesus that they barely know. They don't know if these people are mixing Christianity with Buddhism, if these people are mixing Christianity with witchcraft, if they have stones and tarot cards that they're reading, but yet they will claim them as souls that have been transformed by their ministry. It's the transformation of a life that they cannot verify because they don't know it and know how it lives or looks into it like somebody who would be shepherded in a certain manner within their congregation. To fast forward, Micah not only builds this idol, but ends up having a shrine, ephod, and other household idols made alongside of the main one. And alongside of that, he decides to consecrate his sons as priests. Now, pastors come into play in this story from verse 6 onward. Micah must have had some kind of conviction or a lack of trust in his son being a priest, because he hires a new one to look over his spiritual affairs. The hiring of this Levite is like Micah installing him as pastor over a new church. We see that in verse 9, Micah questions the Levite. We'll consider this Levite's pastoral interview. Micah asks the Levite, "Where do you come from? What are you doing around here?" And this Levite sounds like every other pastor in the beginning of their pastoral journey. And he answers in Judges 17:9, "I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I am going to stay wherever I may find a place." This term, "wherever I may find a place," was just simply the Levite saying, "I'm just trying to find somewhere where I can serve as a Levite. I'm just looking for sheep that I can be a shepherd to. God, if you allow me to lead and care over your people, I swear I will make them my priority and be the best shepherd to them that you've ever seen." We've all heard that language before. So Micah extends a ministry calling to this Levite to be a father and priest to him. This word father in the text means papa. It's where we get the terminology of a pope from. He offers this Levite living expenses and living conditions that are satisfactory, and the Levite begins his role as Micah's priest. Now, Micah is so excited about this that he says in verse 13, "Now I know that the Lord will prosper me because I have a Levite as a priest." Now think about this opportunity that the Levite has here if his heart is right. He has the opportunity to lead and shepherd a man who cannot shake his curiosity about God. A man who believes he is serving God faithfully, but has come up in an idolatrous family who believe in more than one God. This Levite has a chance to help Micah actually come to a correct knowledge and worship of Yahweh. I'm sure this Levite, like most of our pastors, started with that intention in his heart. But in chapter 18, you see the Levite do something despicable. Although despicable, it is more common than you think. The Levite leverages his position with Micah to become a well-sought-after preacher who can be purchased for the sheer currency of status, popularity, attention, money, and ego. In context, the Danites are roaming around looking for a place to live that can belong to them and become their place of inheritance. So they send out 5 spies to search the land, and they end up discovering territory by Micah and his territory. When arriving at Micah's home, they recognize the voice of this Levite. They somehow, some way, know him and his voice from where he once traveled and where they are traveling from. And they begin to ask him a few questions. What are you doing in this territory? And how did you get here? He begins to tell them about how much he is enjoying pastoring his new congregation, who was Micah, and about how Micah, the one who hired him, has set him up to lead this new endeavor. Learning about his role, they have a question that they want to put in front of him. Judges 18, verse 5 and 6 say, "Then they said to him, 'Inquire of God, please, that we may know whether our way on which we are going will be successful.' And the priest said to them, 'Go in peace. Your way in which you are going has the Lord's approval.'" So they leave from this Levite priest. They find this set of land occupied by a people that they believe they can conquer. So once they see the land, the 5 men return to their headquarters, let their people know about the land, and then They leave again with 600 armed men to seize this land immediately. But before they go back to the destination to take the land, they make another stop in Micah's territory at Micah's house. On their way to Micah's house, as the 5 spies have been there before, they let everyone with them know the scoop. You know, it's this boy named Micah over here that has an ephod, household idols, and graven images within his home, and we think we might want to take it. But this robbery happens in a weird way. You would think with 600 armed men and them knowing exactly where these items are, that they would just charge in to Micah's home and take it. But the way that they do this, they put the Levite, the priest, the pastor at the center of all of this. Instead of going straight to victimize Micah, these men go to the Levite first. And the text tells us in verse 15 that they asked him of his welfare. Well, to translate that, they just said, how is ministry going? Do you know that you could be designed for more? Doc, I know you got this little church here, but there could be hundreds or thousands waiting to hear from you. In all honesty, these individuals cared nothing about his welfare. It wasn't a genuine concern. Instead, what they were doing were checking his temperature of contentment. You know, lack of contentment and commitment to the main thing that God has called pastors to has been at the root of them leveraging their congregations more than anything else. Deep inside, they want to be bigger, better, more well-known, make more money, get more attention, spend more time away from their congregations instead of spending time with them. So after they asked him about his welfare, and with the 600 armed men standing by, they went into Micah's house and began to rob him of these idols. The priest tries to stop them at first and asks them, "What are you doing?" And you would think that after he uttered those words, he would become an immediate threat and enemy to them, and that they would handle him physically. But instead of threatening him with harm, they would give him an opportunity in secrecy to join them. Now, some of our leaders nowadays have failed to realize that this same maneuver is used by Satan. This is what Satan has used to neutralize so many of them to take their real, true kingdom impact away. Instead of threatening them with harm or spiritual warfare or attacking them, he will just simply offer them an opportunity that will improve their lives, but weaken the quality of ministry that they are giving to their flock as a shepherd. In verse 19, and they said to him, "Be silent, put your hand over your mouth, and go with us and be to us a father and a priest." Well, if it was an honorable offer, they wouldn't have had to tell him to be silent and put his hand over his mouth. This was a backdoor offer. They tell him, "Is it better for you to be a priest to the house of one man, or to be a priest to a tribe and a family in Israel?" Verse 20 says, the priest's heart was glad. It was joyful in his heart that he finally got the eyeballs, the attention, the promise of more money, more popularity. And watch this. When they were supposed to take the idols at first, the text now says in verse 20, and he took the ephod, household idols, and the carved image and went among the people. It wasn't the 600 armed men that made him say yes. It wasn't the 600 armed men nor the 5 spies that robbed Micah's home. Now, many of you will say, well, how can this go for a pastor who has been doing his job and just got led astray? This priest was already pastoring over someone who believed in idols, someone who was going for multiple gods. So maybe he was crooked from the start. And that is a very valid point. But just because he could have been doing shepherding wrong does not mean it changes the standard of which shepherding is. His duty, his devotion, his call was to Micah and whoever was in Micah's household. And what moved him off of that call was not God's will to do something else that God called him to. What moved him off of that call was popularity, more money, more attention, more recognition. The same things that our pastors are finding on the internet. In this passage, Micah was the priest's lead magnet. I believe if he would have stayed behind and let them take the idols, then this is when his true ministry could have started with Micah. He could have said, Micah, you don't need those idols because the one true God is Yahweh and he is enough to satisfy plus more. But what do individuals like Micah do when your priest, your pastor, is running after the same idols as you? No, he didn't steal money like Micah did in the beginning, but he let money steal him. This place of ministry was all he asked God for before, but now it was too small as he thought about all the other applause, all the other people, all the other coins. He can get more suits and have a better lifestyle. He was no longer a shepherd. He was now a hired hand, like Jesus references in John 10. So now I want to give you a couple of questions of reflection and application. When you think about your pastor's social media presence and public platform, what percentage of that seems focused on shepherding the local congregation versus building a broader platform? How does this make you feel as a church member? Now consider the parallel between Micah's situation and modern church dynamics. Have you ever felt like a lead magnet in your church? In what ways have you seen yourself or your fellow church members being used as content or promotional material? Is your pastor more concerned about the views that happen outside of your church than inside of your church when it comes to the sermon? Is your pastor caught up in playing this political game in the city where he's using you as church members to help him be known in the city and throughout its politics? You will know that your pastor is doing these things because all of these things benefit him, but they don't benefit the church in a whole. Now, reflecting on the Levite's initial commitment versus his later choices, what signs might indicate that your spiritual leader's heart has shifted from shepherding to platform building? In the story, Micah's mother mixed worship of Yahweh with idolatry. How do you see this kind of syncretism manifesting in modern church culture, particularly in the way success and influence are being pursued? Is anybody allowed to just say that they're saved just because it gets you more numbers? Is your church actually checking to see if these salvations are real? Are we really baptizing believers of Jesus, or are we baptizing people who are experimenting with all different kinds of spiritual things outside of Jesus Christ? Now, the text emphasizes that it wasn't the 600 armed men who made the Levite leave. It was his glad heart at the opportunity. What does this reveal about the nature of temptation in ministry? How might this apply not only to your leader, but other leaders and other areas of spiritual leadership within your church? How have you personally contributed to the mass evangelical industrial system? Through the engagement of your pastor as a celebrity, and through the engagement of their content not being something that says, "Thus saith the Lord," but something that is more culturally popular, and that's why it has supremacy. What is your response when you see your church or fellow members being used as content for social media or marketing materials? Do you speak up if that marketing is not really about Jesus Christ being Lord and Savior? Do you speak up if it is not central to the kingdom work that is supposed to be going on? How can you maintain a balance between supporting your church's broader mission while ensuring the local congregation remains the priority? Now, to our pastors and ministry leaders, here are a few questions of reflection for you. The Levite began with sincere words about wanting to shepherd God's people or finding a place to stay. I think all of us should examine our own journeys. How have your initial ministry motivations evolved? What drives your decisions today? I want you all to consider your social media presence and public platform. Who receives your shout outs and attention nowadays? Is it your faithful long-term members or those who helped you expand your platform? When was the last time you turned down an opportunity for greater influence because it would compromise your ability to shepherd your current flock? The story shows how Satan often uses opportunities rather than threats to neutralize spiritual leaders. What opportunities are currently testing your commitment to your primary calling? Like Micah's initial church was too small for the Levite, do you find yourself viewing your current ministry context as a stepping stone to something bigger? And if you see it as a stepping stone, what does that reveal about your heart? How do you determine whether a new opportunity will enhance or detract from your primary shepherding responsibilities? Are you the only one that's allowed to determine that? Are your elders allowed to say what you can and what you cannot do outside of the pastoral role? In what ways might you be unconsciously treating your congregation as a product or lead magnet? How do you balance the genuine desire to reach more people with the sacred duty of caring for those already entrusted to you? Now, here are some practical application steps for our church members. I need you to examine your own participation in platform building. Review your social media engagement with church content. Analyze how you talk about your church to others. Consider whether you're enabling unhealthy patterns and reflect on your own motivations for church involvement. Second thing I want you to do is take active steps in maintaining local church focus. Prioritize personal relationships over online engagement. Because who cares if you are reaching people over the internet when you are a stranger to those in your own community? Build authentic relationships with church leadership to help them develop healthy boundaries around social media and even your own social media consumption. Establish regular check-ins with church leadership through the elders. Have the elders ask them poignant questions about where their heart, where their focus, and where their mind is. And finally, practical steps for pastors and ministry leaders. Start to be listeners and look out for what your people are actually whispering about you. If you've been a pastor for any amount of time, you know that they will say one thing to your face but feel another in their heart. Therefore, you need to conduct a comprehensive ministry audit. Review all your social media content and engagement for emotionalism, propaganda, commodifying your people and using them as a lead magnet, only showing moments that attract people because it feels good instead of the moments that challenge and should convict. Analyze your time spent on local ministry versus platform ministry. Evaluate the impact of your speaking engagements and everything you do outside your church. Assess the balance of personal versus public ministry. And then second, you need to implement protective measures. That happens when you create clear boundaries between platform and pastoral work. Set hours that are agreed upon and voted on by your church and elders. Establish accountability partners to look over that. Set regular review periods for ministry focus. Develop guidelines for content creation. Is it benefiting what you want to say to the world? Or is it benefiting what your church needs to hear from their shepherd? You, in strengthening local church focus, need to increase your personal engagement with your congregation. If you can shoot a podcast every week for thousands of people that you do not know, then you can prioritize one-on-one discipleship and build stronger local leadership teams for the people that you are supposed to know. The mark of effectiveness used to be when a pastor knew his congregation and was known by his congregation. Now the mark of effectiveness has changed to how well a pastor is known outside of his congregation, because he uses his congregation as a platform, a product, and a lead magnet. Don't be like this Levite in Judges 17 and 18. Let's not use our congregations as products. Let's make our congregations our priority, because they are the very sheep and the very pasture that you have been called to